Hey, good evening, good evening. Happy Thursday to everyone out there. Um, sorry, I was trying to get my screen right. Welcome to the Erudition Network, um, Black History and Interactive Knowledge Session. I am Eddie Phillips. I am the founder of the Erudition Network. Um, We come on every week on Thursday to discuss with you issues of Black history, general knowledge, and to provide understanding on things that are hidden in our history. And I am happy to be back with you this week. I was not here last week. I'm still not quite 100%. Many may not know that I had a. Hey, what's up, Mike? Hey. I had a horrendous fall about a week ago. Um, Injured myself pretty badly, but I am here um, fighting through it. I thank God for my wife and my kids. They have been very patient with me over the last week. As a matter of fact, I thank my wife. She uh, decided to cut up my beard a little bit, which was definitely needed. But anyway, I am good. God is yet blessing, and I am happy to be back with you. Last week, my sons held it down, and I am so I would be remiss to say how proud I am of my children. I was missing one of them. Elliot was not on, but um, for the most part, and that's because he was busy doing what 13-year-olds do. He didn't have time to be on, but no, he had some things that he was doing too. But I can't say enough about what my sons did last week. It's not easy to yes they did, Mike, to to do this show, and it's not easy to answer questions or to respond interactively. Now I was in chat and I saw some of the things that were said and some of the things that were brought up, and it is always refreshing when you know that your children um are listening to what you're saying and they are um, taking it in, even at the age of 10 years old, right? And it is so important for us as we discuss our history. Um, and then they were talking about some stuff. I laughed because I was like, man, they didn't have no shame whatsoever in what they was talking about. There was no controversy that they wasn't willing to delve into to free around. They gave you exactly um, what they wanted. You know what you know what they thought, and so I think um, I can't say enough about that. I can't say enough about that. And I said I was gonna get on here and brag about that because I just was so impressed with that. Yeah, I do feel a little bit better, Grandma. I'm definitely making it right. So not 100%, but I'm here. I'm here. Hey, Dad, how you doing? Oh, thank you. This has been, because I talked to you. It's been a struggle. One of the things that my sons talked about last week was movement, and I was impressed because I was like, I didn't know. I gave them no major standing order, but I just told them I want you to get on here and talk about something that you know, okay, something that you can talk to about intellectually that you understand, and it was amazing to listen to them talk about movement and what movement meant and um, how we embrace movement. And I was going through that, and I just it shook me because then I started to think. I was like, we in this country um, do so much protesting. There's nothing wrong with protesting. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. But what are we protesting for? That's one issue that I was so impressed that they talked about. And secondarily, right, what is the proper way to protest? Is the proper way to protest to go out here peacefully, non-violently, to make a point, which they talked about last week, and know what you're talking about and stand on that point? Or is it something for you to go and topple something? And I use that word specifically, to topple somebody, because topple means to push over, knock down, right? To bend over, right? To knock out. Many different things you could say with the word topple. But we have lost ourselves in the idea of what movement is, and so we try to topple regimes, and we try to topple things that we don't agree with. No problem in having a movement and having a discussion and having an interaction to try to stop something. But when you get to the idea of the methodology and the understanding of knocking something down or tearing something down or toppling something, then it becomes a different thing. Too often, as we look at Ferguson, as we look at Baltimore, as we look at all Chicago, we look at these protests that then break out into what they term to be civil unrest, riots, rioters, right? Looters, vandalizers. And so then we say, well, what is the proper way of doing this? And then I like to go back in history. I was actually talking to my father a little bit earlier today, and I was telling him, I'm from Chicago initially. I was born and raised in Chicago. Cancel culture is another way of toppling, right? Of knocking somebody down. When you topple somebody, you tend to want to stand on top of them. You tend to want to stand over what remains. When we look at the issues that were put out, remember a couple of years ago when everybody, the issues when there was statues, monuments, right? Everybody wanted to go topple these monuments over. They wanted to pull them down like the Berlin Wall or the Saddam statues in Iraq, right? They wanted to go in, or the Nazi swastika in Germany. They wanted to pull it down, topple it, and say, hey, we stand on top of this. We are the supreme. We are the righteous. And in reality, what we do is we topple something, and then we have another entity stands over it as a winner, right? We have to be careful with the idea of toppling. We have to be careful with the idea and movement, because a movement shouldn't be that. If you drive a car, right, you don't go onto the expressway and just go ram into the car, right, to dominate that space. At least you shouldn't. You don't go bumper to bumper and tell somebody, get out of my way. What you do is you merge. If they're too slow, right, or if they're driving erratically, you move around them. But in no matter what you're doing, you're going with the flow to keep the general idea of traffic and forward thrust moving. I guess the topic for the last 3 weeks has been movement. Are we moving, or are we obstructionists? Are we bullies? Are we topplers? Are we usurpers? Are we trying to knock somebody out of the way so that our agenda, our vehicle, is the supreme vehicle in that space? Or are we trying to merge to get from point A to point B? Are we trying to get around someone who may be obstructing our way and get around them and go join the other forward thrust of traffic to avoid that diabolical person that's swabbing all over the lane or trying to cause an accident? Do we report? Do we do things to try to stop that entity from being able to harm us? Do we utilize the things that are within our society to still keep the forward thrust of movement? I cannot say this enough, but we do not. We don't. I agree. I agree. Jemima and Uncle Ben. I like to believe that we like to merge, that we like to be able to move forward, that we like to be a help more than a hindrance. But one of the things that stops us in movement, one of the things that stops us in forward progress is ignorance. If you don't know the speed, I'm going to use the analogy again of a roadway. If you don't know the speed, because there's no signs put up, no markers to tell you, hey, this is a 45, this is a 55, 65, 75 mile per hour, you will feel free to do whatever it is that you want to do. And sometimes those roads put those signs up for your health, your safety. Because maybe the guy that designed that road, the people who are empowered to do that, understand that there's a bend coming that's going to turn. And if you're going 75 miles an hour, you're not going to be able to control your car. But we don't like to believe that anybody has our well-being. We don't want to trust what has been negotiated, discussed, to be able to keep society moving forward with structure. Now, why am I saying all of that? I was alluding to a moment ago that I talked to my father earlier, and I was talking to him. I'm from Chicago. And one of the things I wanted to share with my sons after they had talked with movement is the Hay Market Riots. Now, some of you all out there in Chicago, because I have a lot of friends and people who watch this from Chicago, those who watch it live, you can comment right now. But how many of us know anything about the Hay Market Riots? How many of us who live in Chicago every day know what the significance was and how that history plays into where we are right now and informs where we are right now? A lot of us do not. A lot of us do not, unfortunately. We do not go into it to try to understand it because it wasn't really taught to us. I can't tell you any time in my elementary school career in Chicago or high school career that anybody told me what the Haymarket riots were about. Nobody told me anything about it. And I didn't know about the monuments that were put up about that riot. So since I see no one is here can probably say that they know, I would love to know, can anybody in their school career tell me anything about it? Mike, you're not alone. Living in Chicago, because we're not taught about it. And there's a reason. I'm alluding to this. There's a reason why I believe we are not taught about these things. Chicago is a city that has multiple, many monuments. And one of the things about Chicago is that a lot of those monuments that are in the city are because of tragedies that happened, the Chicago fire, different things that went on. There are monuments for the Civil War. There are monuments to Confederate and Union generals. And that is because Chicago is a big city, just like New York. And so one of the things that the city does, or the state does, is it says, hey, listen, we will allow you to build monuments for things. One of the stipends is that you have to do it within a certain amount of time after the event. Now, the funny thing about a monument is that sometimes when those monuments are built, they're built by private groups who negotiate with the state. And this is why you don't have a lot of monuments for African Americans, for females, for women's rights in some of these cities. But you have a lot for the Civil War. You have a lot for World War One. You even have Revolutionary War, French and Indian War monuments. Most of us wouldn't even know who half the people that these monuments are built for, but the monument is there to attest and to be able to have something there. That's what a monument means. Something in stone or fixture as a reminder to the public that this thing, this person, had some importance to history. Now, getting back to the Hay Market riots. Here we are in Chicago. And one of the lead-ins to, I'm going to give you a brief history, and I'll give you something in the comments later of where to go read and learn more about the Hay Market Riots. There are many places to go, but I'll give you a brief history. But basically what happened is that in 1867, a couple of years after the Civil War, Illinois had passed a law mandating an 8-hour workday, but it was never enforced. It was never enforced. 8-hour work days were something that the populist movement wanted to push because the idea was to allow people to have time at home, have time to rest, because a lot of jobs, people were working in these fish houses, in these factories, in these settings, in major parts of the city. They were the ones that kept the city alive with money and trade. And so a lot of owners did not want these places to close. So they had child labor, they had women and men working all types of times of the day and night. And a lot of people had horrible health, no health care back then. People were dying, kids were dying, different things were happening, industrial accidents were occurring. And people were getting tired on this job because they were being worked out. Coming out of slavery, there was no longer anything of free labor. There was no longer slaves who could be put to do this work. So that meant that immigrants and people had to come in and do the work for the country to be able to move forward and to survive. So in 1867, the idea was placed to do this, but it was never enforced. So it wasn't until 1886 that workers in Chicago at Hay Market decided they wanted to demonstrate for the right to have an 8-hour workday. 1886 is significant because we're coming into the industrial period. We're firmly in the industrial period, coming into the new century, and people wanted to know that they had the right to live, other than having these rich men who were taking over society. So there was a huge parade that drew thousands of people who came up Michigan Avenue. And on that afternoon, right, there was a guy named August Spies, right? He was a writer of a German newspaper. But he was angry because, this is the other thing, because of the work that was being done in the McCormick Reaper plant. Now, we all know the McCormick place, but we don't know that it was named after Cyrus McCormick. Huge industrials during the time, early 1900s, late 1800s. And Cyrus McCormick, right, had decided he didn't care about the 8-hour workday. He didn't care that these people were sickly and dying and drunks, and he didn't care. So what he did is he hired new people to be strike breakers to work in his plants and keep his plants running. Now, that may sound like that's his right. That was Cyrus's right. But what it did was it made other people angry. Again, we are in this issue where we like to topple. We like to topple. So some of Spies' people, right? Some of August Spies' people showed up during the shift change, and they said, listen, what we're going to do is we're going to heckle the strikers. We're going to go get at these people who are strike breakers. So they went out and started heckling these people. It became a riot because I'm going to topple. These people are wrong and we're wrong. We're right. So the police opened fire. 2 people were killed. So that happened on, I believe, May the 3rd. I may be wrong, either May the 2nd or May the 3rd. The next day, 2,000 workers assembled at Hay Market Square, right there on that corner of Randolph and Des Street. And the mayor at the time, Carter Harrison, showed up, and it was a peaceful protest against the loss of life that had been caused by the police, and also to still grieve about the fact of the 8-hour workday and the right to be treated like a human being. The mayor came to keep the calm, and everything went pretty good. And everything stayed pretty calm all day with different speakers coming up and down all throughout the day. But by the time of the evening, it started to rain a little bit. So they closed the event down a little early. The mayor declared that the meeting had been peaceful. He praised everybody who had been there and kept a peaceful protest. And he told the police to start getting people home. That's what he said. However, when the mayor left, the police commanders, who were angry because people had spoken against them throughout the day, decided that was not going to stand. So what they did, one of the police captains, this is what they say happened in history, he stood out there on the stand and said, in the name of the people of Chicago and of Illinois, I command all of you all to disperse in peace. And then subsequently, he ordered the police to start clubbing people to get them out of the area. 300 workers were left, and a riot broke out again. And then out of somewhere, no one really knows historically, whether it been something that the police used by accident or something that the rioters did, there was a huge explosion. Many policemen were killed. Many of the people who were at the protests were killed. And some believe that some of them were killed from the friendly fire of the police, who also started firing into the crowd. And so the police started firing, and people were being hit, people were being wounded. Hundreds were hurt. Horrible scene as the crowd scattered out. Now, people were arrested for this. Even though it was later found out that 8 of the labor people who were arrested weren't even there. They had already left earlier in the evening, but they had been some of the speakers. So what they wanted to do was make an example out of them. Some of them were given the death penalty. 3 of them were put to death. Others were locked up for the rest of their lives in prison until later the governor, Etgild, released them from prison. However, he lost his political career for freeing these men who were known to be innocent. Why is all of this important? Why am I bringing up this history? I'm bringing up this history to you because as we look back at that time, May 3rd or 4th, 1889, and you think that has nothing to do with me right now, right? But on the anniversary of that, the city dedicated a statue in Hay Market Square of the city with the police captain holding up his hand, making the statement, as I said, in the name of the people of Chicago and Illinois, I command peace. What is left out is the brutality that happened, that the police did on the workers. What is left out is the idea of the men who were put to death, right? Because of all of that debacle, and those who were basically made into be heroes for what they caused. Now you say, Eddie, why is that important? Because today in Chicago, there is still a monument. There is still a monument of that police statue sitting on the south side in front of police headquarters, the exact same statue. It has made a trip all around, but it's still there. They set it out there at Hay Market Square, and it was looted, vandalized, it was torn at, people threw things, they wrote things on it. And then for the better part of maybe, I'd say 60, 70 years, even though it was an eyesore and people hated it that it was there, it stayed. So then they decided they were going to move it. They played I like to call move the statue, move the monument around. They put it over by the Kennedy Expressway. They was like, well, okay, but it was still vandalized. This idea of this policeman telling them this is all about peace. And they kept putting it in areas where Black people lived to push the idea that this police officer was here to keep peace over the savages, over those by the state order, by the order of Chicago and Illinois. We tell you to be peaceful. So somebody tried to blow it up. In the 60s, the Weather Underground decided they were going to target the statue and tried to blow it up. And they took credit for it, but the statue was repaired, rebuilt, and put back because Mayor Daley, doing his infamous, after Dr. King was killed in 68, Mayor Daley put out an order. And many of us, again, don't remember this history. Mayor Daley Sr. put out a shoot to kill order during the April riots that followed the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. If you were found on the street, you would be killed justifiably by the police. So Blacks went to the statue that's in their neighborhood and they vandalized it, painted it in black. Daley got on national television and told people it was an act of horror and an attack on the citizens of Chicago. And this just shows you the savagery of people. Now, he didn't call it Black people, but he alluded to it. And then he said, we're going to fix that statue so that these people know, the younger generations know that the policeman is their friend and that he wants to keep peace. Despite the fact that it stood over the riots that happened in the late 60s, early 70s, despite the fact of the hypocrisy that statue represented, that monument, as we talked about earlier, to send a message. So here we are now, watching this statue make its way back and forth. They put it in the State Street Police Headquarters from 1972 to 1976. Then they decided, hey, we don't want to keep it here because people don't see it. So what did they do? They moved it to the Police Training Academy. And it sat on a pedestal in front of the Police Training Academy in Chicago. From 1976 to 2007, it stood there as a monument. Peace. We tell you to be peaceful in the name of Chicago and the state of Illinois. And where is it today? Today, it sits, like I said, in front of police headquarters, that same statue. They rededicated it, beautified it, gave it a higher pedestal. And again, a statue that represents one of the worst tragedies that many in Chicago, historians say was one of the worst tragedies in Chicago, has been saved and kept for over 100 years. And it stands there as a monument to the police having the right to enforce their representation of peace on those who they feel are secondary or less than them. Our children aren't taught this. I talked to my children about this. They didn't know this. Mind you, they don't live in Chicago. They weren't raised in Chicago. But it spots to me the point of that story is the power of monuments. The power of a monument over a movement. Long after the 8-hour day movement had succeeded and passed and moved on, the relic of the suppression that movement endured still stands in Chicago in front of a state-sponsored building. That monument, that relic that stood during riots, that stood during Red Summer in Chicago, that relic of oppression that is basically state-sponsored with that hand up still stands there. I was trying here a moment ago while I was explaining that to you all to try to show you a picture of that, of it still standing. No problem. No care. Because in the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, in the end of the day, what it's designed to do is send a message to us every time you walk past it. Black, white, whatever. That we have the power. That policeman on that statue isn't holding a bomb, a stick, the guns that were fired at those people. He's not holding any of that. Seems like an agent of peace. When in the reality, if you know the history of it, you see it for what it is. You see it as a person, as a personage of oppression. There it is right there. Standing there. Those who suffered under that, long dead in their originality. But it took on a deeper meaning as time went on with mayors and riots, further riots. It was blown up and they repaired it. It was desecrated and they fixed it. Why? Because as that sign says, in the name of the people of Illinois, I command peace. As if you're Moses. You know, I tell people every week, I come on to Erudition, even now when I'm not well, but when I come on because I want people to understand history. And sometimes I have a hard time understanding why people don't embrace their history. And I go through sites and I read different things, and people send me stuff all the time about history, not just African-American history, just history in itself. And recently, over the last couple of days, I had some people say some things to me in chat. Like, Eddie, I hear it, but man, sometimes the things you put it be so hard to listen to, so hard to deal with. I get it. I get it. But I can't be quiet. I can't ignore it. You know, I'm gonna talk to you right now as we finish this next 30 minutes. You know, I spent the time this week with my sons, and I don't get a lot of time sometimes because of my job. And as I said when I first started this program today, you all have no idea how proud I am of my boys. Because sometimes I think, just like with anybody who's a parent, they don't listen. I really think it. My wife, we both say, I don't listen. The boy's not listening. But I listened to them last week. And I realized how much they actually pull in. They retain. That's the importance. You say something over and over and over again. My wife often makes fun. She's like, people know you just like to talk. I really don't. I'm an introvert. I don't know if you know this. I am. I really don't, but I love to teach. I love to talk about and get people to stir something that maybe you take for granted, that you pass every day, that you don't see. To give you some idea of what the importance of that is. My son, had his 13th birthday this last week, and Elliot, and we had a discussion because I pulled him off to the side, and even though we were celebrating his birthday, I think it was the day after, but I said, I was just, because I spent a lot of time in my private time reading, and I said, I want to tell you something. I know it's your birthday, and I know you just had your birthday, but I said, I want to sit here. I want to tell you something. I said, I'm so happy that God has allowed you to see this birthday. I'm so joyous of that. But then I also told him, I said, but I would be remiss to not sit here and talk to you about something. Because a couple of days before that, I had been going and reading through another volume of slave narratives, which I try to go through as many as I can as I find them. And I came across a testimony from a woman named Ida Blackshear Hutchison from North Little Rock, Arkansas. And when they interviewed her, she was 73 years old, former the child of a slave. And what she said had shook me. And it was crazy because I had just read this just before my son's birthday. And I'm going to share that with you. I posted it on Erudition, but it doesn't seem like a lot of people looked at it. So I'm going to share it on the program. I shared it with my father earlier today. But I had wrote, let us not forget this. What she said is that once on a Blackshear place, they took all the fine-looking boys and girls that was 13 years old or older, and they put them in a big barn, and they stripped them naked. See, they used to strip these kids naked and put them in a big barn every Sunday and leave them there until Monday morning. And out of those weekends came 60 babies. There was so many babies, too many babies to leave in the quarters for someone to take care of during the day. So when the young mothers went to work, the masters told them they had to take their babies with them to the field. And it was 2 or 3 miles for them to get from the house to the field. And he didn't want them to be losing time by walking backwards and forward trying to nurse these babies. So what they did is they built a big, long trough, like a big old cradle, and they put all these babies in it. And she said they put them in there every morning, and when the mothers came out to the field, they would go out and they would work. And they would set it at the end of the row under a big cottonwood tree. And when they were on the other end of the row, it started to rain. A cloud came, and it grew fast. The rain grew fast, and it thundered, and it was lightning, as if the world was coming to an end. Big drops of rain. And so when they finally was able to get back over to where the babies were, when they got to get to the end of the field, that trough had been filled with water, and every baby in it was floating around in the water, drowned. Ms. Blackshear says that they never got nary a lick of labor or nary a red penny from any of those babies that they had devised to make. Now you think, man, why would you tell your son this after his birthday? 13 years old has a different meaning depending on where you come up and what you know. And as a young Black man, I wanted him to understand the things his ancestors, his age, where he thinks that it's video games, playing ball, hanging with his friends. All of this, which you should enjoy, that wasn't the nature of our history. Every week, I get on here. Every week. And I try so hard to give you what I know, not what I theorize, not what my opinion is. It's not a talk show for me to do that, but to tell you a story and tell you some history that you may not know, that you may not understand, because it wasn't given to you, wasn't provided to you. When we talked about that Haymarket story, there's so many different levels to that. When you consider what happened during Red Summer in 1919, when you consider what Black folks went through in the city of Chicago during that time, when you understand what a riot was deemed to be, and how people felt that the police had the right to come in and burn you out of your house. When you consider the fact that they were chasing people through those streets because Black people had formed an ad hoc self-defense and said that they weren't going to be terrorized. But that didn't stop these people from running up in there and victimizing them. When you think about going to work and seeing that statue standing over you with the police officers saying, peace, where you don't have a house because they went through in Red Summer in 1919 and burned your house down, killed your uncle, your brother in Chicago, not the South. And so when we talk about these stories, right, we need to understand. We need to understand why they are relevant and why we feel we should share them. You know, I was talking to my son and telling him, when you consider that all of that, and you look at that statue, when I see that statue, that's what comes to my mind. As a historian, that's what comes to my mind. The race riots at Red Summer that happened on the 29th Street beach in Chicago. Can anybody out there tell me why that race riot kicked off? What happened on the 29th Street beach in Chicago that kicked off the violence of July 27, 1919? What are the major contributors to Red Summer? Because I know we're not taught that in school. I know that they don't provide it to us. But you would be surprised how often people tell me, I know that. I know my history, brother. And how many times when I ask a question, they don't know. What is that lunacy? The desire to tell me what you know so you don't have to learn anything new. I'll tell you what happened. I'll tell you exactly what happened. There was a man named Eugene Williams. He was an African-American teenager. And on the beach in Chicago, there was an imaginary, listen what I just said there, an imaginary border in the water separating Blacks from whites. And Eugene Williams drowned. They said he was floating on a homemade raft off the shore of Lake Michigan. He was just out there trying to enjoy the water. And then a white man named George Starber started throwing rocks at Eugene. And by some reports, he hit Eugene in the head. Eugene fell into the water. He drifted over to the side of the beach that the whites occupied. And he drowned. Nobody came to save him after they had hit him with the rock. So this caused a huge racial unrest because the police didn't want to arrest Starber. The police, the peaceful police. Nobody wanted to do anything. And thousands of Black people who had come back from World War I, they wanted action. They wanted to understand why a 17-year-old boy got hit in the head and was killed for floating accidentally across an imaginary line. And because all of those people demanded something to be done, thousands of white men stormed into Chicago from Indiana, from Southern Illinois. They marched down the street. They went into Black homes. They raped, they beat, they killed. And you could go find the pictures of this all over. But I want you to keep remembering that police officer saying, peace, peace. It got so bad that Black former military people, they had to go and pull up their arms, take weapons, and go fight these people in the street. That's what happened. The police, if you look at the pictures of Red Summer in Chicago, were part of these roving, riotous people. They were a part of it. They attacked just like anybody else did. They killed in their police uniforms. In this last couple of minutes, I'm going to go back to the idea of what I told you at the very beginning of the hour when we talked about movement and how my sons talked about it last week. Movement. To try to make a difference. To try to keep moving forward. Because knowing that everybody is not an obstructionist, but to identify markers, monuments, rules, conditions on this road that we're on in this movement. You drive to New York, you see the Statue of Liberty, you see the Empire State Building. Every city has its monument, its building, its thing that stands out. And long before those skyscrapers were marking the sky, there were monuments. They marked the land. They marked the community. We have to understand how to put all those things together. I do this program because I want you to try to put those things together. I want you to tell your children, like I tell mine, everybody out here isn't evil. Nobody's saying that. But if we don't share our history in its fullness, if we're not honest about it, we repeat it. We don't see the monuments for what they are. We don't see the things out here for what they are trying to express. Change comes when people finally start taking a look at what they do and who they are and where they're going. We got about 10 minutes. I came on a little bit later, about 5 minutes later. If anybody out there, I see we got a couple of people on the live program. And let me say something about that. I don't care if you watch Erudition as a replay. I just ask that if you do, and there is something that is said in the program that you have a question about, that you want further understanding on, that you post that question. And I go out of my way to answer it. A couple of weeks ago, a young lady came on spouting some things that were completely, absolutely not true. And I went in to go look into research and actually go pull out to get her to understand what she was saying and why it wasn't true and why it was just regurgitation of something somebody had told her based on something that they didn't understand. So If you are on, come on here and you watch it later, and I know a lot of people do, I'm fine with that. But please ask a question. Please give us an idea, something to talk about. Sean Anthony, it's very important to know the evils because the same evils from the past can also affect your future if you don't know of them. I agree, my son, and that is absolutely truthful. And too often, it is a painful fact that we in this country keep repeating. We don't look at it. We don't value. I won't say all of us, that's wrong. But many of us don't value our history. Many of us fight against it. You know, I often talk about the Alamo, right? The same people who are down there in Texas screaming at you, remember the Alamo, are the same people who will turn over and say, go back to your country. Get out of my country. Don't cross my border. And not understand the historical hypocrisy of what they're saying. Not get it in their mind that the reason we scream, remember the Alamo, those people were at the Alamo, was because Santa Ana, when they came up, were trying to remove them out of their lands. They were trespassers. And let's go deeper. They went down there to Texas because they wanted to keep slaves. That's what it was. But remember the Alamo. But get out of my country. If we don't teach history in its facts and its truth, as my son just said right here, it'll affect your future negatively. The same people, told my father earlier, who came over into this land and asked the indigenous people to help them navigate across this continent. And they did. They helped them. Those same people will tell you, we want to make it our land again. Those same people who watched as Asians were blown up making the railroads, the same people who brutalized and wrote laws preventing Asians from owning businesses in the West, right? Who take away from the idea of the Asians who came over to show them how to blow and cause explosions to make their way through these mountain caves that the railroad had to go through. Telling these people, you're less than me. Get out of my land. If we do not understand our history, we will repeat it. So, bruh, yeah, Merry Christmas, man. Yeah, Asian Exclusion Act. So much of our history is vile. I'm not going to lie to you. But it's vital to understand. I'm not on here trying to teach you anything to make you hate yourself. I just want you to speak about history in its fact. I don't want you to lie about it. I want you to understand why this man is upset and this man is upset. Based on the things that their ancestors went through, based on the things that have been done in this country. And if you could understand his point of view or her point of view, then you could have a discussion that doesn't become riotous like we talked about earlier in the program. Then you're no longer trying to topple somebody. You're no longer trying to overtake and push somebody out of the way. You're trying to understand we're both going to the same destination. And we both want to get there safely, wisely. That's what we're trying to do here. I have many friends that I talk to, and I said, listen, I'm not on here to try to tell you that white people are the devil. I see so many Black history programs and things online that do that. That is not my goal here. My goal is for you to understand history in its painfulness, in its truth, in its fact. There are white, Black, red, brown, yellow people who gave their lives in this country for the betterment of American citizens, not just Black, not just white, not just red, not just yellow, for all of us, with the faith that what they were doing would make society, American society, better. They forego all of that idea of you look different than me. Your culture is different than mine. Let me appreciate you like you appreciate me. Knowing the truth lets you make your own moral decisions instead of what has been indoctrinated into you. If you only know half the information, you can't make an informed decision. It's true. Absolutely true. You know, I posted something earlier today from Carter G. Woodson. And Carter G. Woodson said the mere imparting of information is not education. I don't try to just impart things to you. I'm not one of these sites out here that's just going to give you a Black history blip and walk away. I want you to think, because education requires you to actually research, understand, and know. I want to guide you to where you need to go to learn. So if I bring up something like the Hay Market Riots, if I talk about Red Summer, if I talk about these things that maybe you're not too much aware of, then that puts a bee in your bonnet. But then I'm going to tell you, hey, well, where do I go to go look for this? What books? What primary sources can I read? Where can I go to open up my mind about what happened in those days to see the significance of it today? That's the purpose of erudition. We're coming down in those last few minutes. I thank all of you all who are on today. This has been, I did not know if I would do a show today. As you know, as I said earlier, I have not been well, but I have, I'm here. I'm here because this is important to me. I put my sons on last week because I said, if anything, I need to respect the fact of what I have taught them. And they showed me that my labors are not in vain. They are not in vain. And I hope the same when I sit on here with you week after week. We have been doing this for quite some months, almost a year now. And I try to be faithful to the program. And I thank all of you who do watch the program. What do you think the purpose of, say, Alabama banning CRT, period? No post-educational doctorate programs as an adult. They are saying you can't learn true history in this state. What's the end game? Well, you have to also consider, Tyson, that the idea of where these folks are, right? Where they are in the country. It's so easy to say the South, but we have to look at where is the lack of education in this country. What states have the least, have the worst education programs in the country? And once you look at that, you can understand why they don't want you. It's not just necessarily CRT or whatever. They don't want you teaching anything out of the norm of what they've taught, because folks who don't move out of that state are they only know what they were taught in that school system. And they take that for the rest of their lives as they're into their adulthood, and it marks them. And so that's unfortunate, but that is what it is. That is what it is. And so Alabama is not good at all. not doing good at all. And they know that. They know that. Yeah, they wrote it into law. They're trying to keep a way of thinking that goes back centuries now. And unfortunately, they're going to be able to do that because state law allows them to. Because it allows them to. Yeah, they were really good, Grandma. They did very well last week. I was so happy with them and so proud of them. But ladies and gentlemen, let me get on out of here. I will, God willing, be with you again next week, and we will go further. We are going to do a push at the beginning of this year. I think this we've decided going from January until the end of February. We will be doing a push to get more YouTube subscribers and to actually get more financial help with Erudition. We're doing this not for Eddie to be rich, but because we want to be able to do more programs. And I want to be able to hire some people to help us with some of these programs. And so as we get ready to do this new initiative, I hope all of you all will help us. All of you watch later on, and those who are watching live will help us. We're not asking for a lot. We just ask people to be able to help us so we can get the things that we need to further this great vision. All right, I'm out of here. I've belabored you all enough. Been on here for about an hour. I thank you. You all have a blessed and wonderful holiday, and we will see, or Christmas, and we will see you all next week. Thank you for all of your questions, your comments, and everything, and we'll see you next week. Have a good one.